CORE, Godfather. They're ready to say director of CORE. Come on, come with me, Kira. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Great to be here.
So tell me about CORE and Godfather. He just ran away.
Well, my grandfather, Roy Ennis, who founded CORE, which is
Okay.
the conservative civil rights group, the Congress of Racial Equality,
Fantastic.
and I was appointed by Niger Ennis, my uncle, as the Millennial Outreach Director. Basically, it's a fancy way of saying I talk to millennials about conservative socio-political economics, and why the conservative right is just the best route to take, regardless of your bracket, your gender, your class, all of those things, your ethnicity, and some tune in and they figure it out. Some, the millennials are an iffy group.
It's challenging. It's challenging to get millennials' attention and then to figure out what they care about. Tell me, what do you think their priorities are?
Well, I think if you ask them the real questions, their priorities are they want to make money, earn a living, be independent, keep what they make, and they want to be able to have a little dignity and self-respect for themselves. They don't want to live perpetually in their mom's basement. But
It's funny you said it because that's the perception, and that's always obviously the joke of millennials is that, because they could stay on their parents' health care to 25 and their parents' cell phone plan, that they're all living with their parents. But you who work on this every day, that's not the people you meet.
that's not really it. And also, what they want is transparency. Some that I've talked to, just kind of throughout the day, kind of doing a man on the street type thing, they have said that they want to see transparency in their government. And one of the things that have allowed for so much corruption, and I think because they're not being told the truth about specifically the leftist ideology, they're being given basically a line of goods. They believe it. And if we had transparency in our government, you would probably, a lot of them thinking, well, you know what? That side doesn't really seem to bode well for me. I don't think that that's what's in my best interest. But the other side, perhaps maybe, and when I start telling them, the origins and the actual, truth behind the scenes, it's like a light bulb begins to kind of grow ever brighter in their heads, and that's what I live for, to see that kind of like transformation right in front of me. And we are minorities suffer the most under that lack of transparency.
Explain that. Two things I wanted you to explain to me. I find it's the problem with young people in conservatism is it takes a while to understand. It's fact-based. Conservatism is fact-based, policy-based, whereas liberalism is feelings. Like, I feel so bad about this. Right. So first talk about that, and then I want to talk about race issues. But talk about how you have found ways to communicate to young people that is approachable.
Well, the way I go about it usually is I ask them the questions. I say, what do you know about either party? And oftentimes they'll give me, pretty much just the general CNN dribble of what the conservative party is. And then when I ask, okay, well, so what do you think about the leftist party? And again, just the general CNN dribble of what the leftist party is. And I say, well, did you know, and I will fill in X, Y, and Z about the origins, the history. And they're like, well, no, that's not what, Don Lemon told me. No, that's not what Wolf Blitzer said. And I'm like, no,
Right.
And then so what I do is ask them the questions about the origins. I explain to them, and I say, we were once a country where 18-year-olds, even younger, that were fighting in Normandy, and I kind of explain kind of how, I hate to say, not for lack of a better term, they were hardcore, keep it edited, but they were hardcore, and these guys were like rock stars in terms of just being independent. 15-year-old boys, were storming our beaches, and I make it I don't want to like glamorize it, over romanticize it, but I just let them know that that's the kind of people we used to be, and they're like, wow, because it almost kind of makes them think like, well, that's not who I am, that's not who my friends are, that's not what I've ever seen growing up, and and these guys had, regardless of whether they leaned right or left, they had more of a traditional mindset, faith in country and family, and independence, and that I think that kind of coaxes them. And then when I tell them how they've gotten to this point, where they're kind of emasculated, the men, and kind of confused as the women, you have the left to thank for that. And they're like, well, dang. And so you start to show them that what they are, put kind of a mirror up to them and kind of give them who's kind of to blame for that, but what can fix it. And that really, that
It's
really
mental.
helps them to kind of see things.
And tell me, obviously, it is a perception of of conservatism is it's a bunch of old white men. And I mean, I know I get it all the time. And
Yeah, as
so,
a woman.
as a woman, and for you as African American, you know, we are not what we're supposed to be. We're
Well,
supposed to be liberal. We're
oh,
supposed to be. So tell me about that.
well, I mean, okay, so mathematically, I probably should not exist. I am a millennial, so I'm young.
Right.
I'm a minority. I'm black. I'm a minority. I'm a woman, so I'm supposed to be all for
Right.
Cecile Richardson Planned Parenthood, and I live in Los Angeles, California.
Wow. You're like the
And
quad.
yet,
Right.
I'm a hardcore conservative Trumpian. This is a rare moment where I'm not wearing my hat. You usually never see me without it. I will walk through, East LA or, somewhere in Santa Monica with it. I get a lot of
You're talking about your Make America Great Ahead.
bright red one, yes.
Yeah.
And so mathematically, I shouldn't exist at all, but I do. And it's, my conservative journey started at like 8 years old. I realized then that I wanted to do this and
Wow.
put the message out there. And I would learn in the years to come that yes, there are not a lot of us, but we can fix that because our origins were Republican. It was the abolitionists who founded the Republican Party, those who fought against slavery and oppression and segregation. And so for us to have kind of deviated from that history and have bought in the lie of the left, it just perplexes me. We're not a stupid people. We've got the brain God gave us. So, knowing that history and not getting involved with the emotions of what I feel and all the race baiting and the pandering. Quite frankly, it's extremely offensive, the pandering that we receive. And so if I can be a voice to any number of minorities, specifically, brown-skinned ones, black people, to help them wake up. And some are. The statistics are growing in our favor. We are now at 12% black women who support Trump. And almost 20, oh yeah, it started at 4% in 2016. It almost tripled by this year, and it was about 11% men, black men in 2016. It has doubled to almost 24% by this year. And
Let's just look.
yeah.
1/4 of black men support Donald Trump.
That is actually the numbers, and I think that's the reason why DOC has become a huge deal for the left, because they realize they're losing their grip on the long-standing, loyalty that we once gave them. Some are still awake, but a lot of them are waking up, and I think that's why they have to now import voters to now vote for them. They're like, well, we're losing the blacks, let's get the Hispanics in here.
Oh.
And honestly,
We'll
that's
just take a place.
yeah.
What do you explain for that? Such a shift in his first year. What policies do you think appeal to minorities?
I think with minorities specifically, if I had to guess,
Why?
they are responding to his kind of hardcore, no nonsense, like no mincing of words, take charge approach. They're like, look, African Americans, you've been voting 50, 60 plus years Democrat, and what has it gotten you? Nothing. So really, what have you got to lose? And they were like, well, yeah, maybe not. Maybe I'll see. And then once they started to see the numbers roll in, when they started to see more money in their pocketbook,
Yeah.
when they started to see more of them being employed, we have had a record high in employment, thus a record low in unemployment in the black community that we have not seen the likes of since the 70s. So we're going on upwards of almost 50 years of a record high in economic surplus. And that's only going to continue if we allow Trump to be Trump. If the black community can get behind him, which we are doing in a pretty growing a record of numbers, I think that other people, will fall in line and say, well, you know what? If blacks can get behind Trump, then I can get behind Trump, because everyone's afraid to be called a racist. And I think if we're the standard, so if we say it's okay, then it's like whites and other, and then to say, okay, then I can get behind him. I think that's kind of silly, be behind him because he's on the right side of things, literally, but also because that regardless of what some people think, they will figure it out soon. It took us years and years, but we're starting to wake up, and that, quite frankly, does my heart, so good, because the main thing that's always been a source of just stress is like, how can my people finally wake up? When are they ever going to wake up? And we're starting to see that.
And economics. I mean, it's cutting the taxes and growing the economy. That's a message that sees no color, race, gender.
It does not. The only color really that matters and when it comes to economics is green, and a lot of black people are seeing it.
Yeah.
That's, and I think when it's all said and done, they might pretend like, oh, I'm not for Trump, oh, dump Trump, but then when it comes to when they step into that voting booth and it's just them, no one else, they'll vote their pocketbook. I really believe that.
And on that note, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
And we are going to go. I see Wayne LaPierre, the head of the NRA, right now.